Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Reads with an old man rambling about books. Today I'm going to talk about Icerigger, which will be an image of right here. Ta-da! Anyway, this is not the book I was originally going to talk about, and I'll explain to you why. I was watching a YouTube video about representation in media and how it affects people, and I'll tell you which representation. It may become clear later. Anyhow, Icerigger is a book by Alan Foster. He's one of my favorite science fiction authors. This book was written in 1974. This was like his third or fourth book. It kind of shows, but I still think it's one of his better books, even though it's one of his earlier books, and his writing does improve. Before I talk about it, let me brief rundown of the story. Main character is a guy named Ethan from Fortune. He is basically an interplanetary salesman. The company he works for sends him around to travel on cruise ships, and he goes to different planets and sells them things. His current stop is the planet called Trankiki. It is an ice world planet, completely frozen over, with a constant 30-mile-an-hour headwind, 30 kilometer. It's got a constant west headwind. Just basically a frozen hellscape. It does have a native population who are probably around the same as 12th century Europe. They're technologically in the early or late Steel Age, I guess. There is a human outpost here. His plan is to basically go down there and sell trinkets for cash. He figures he can sell, a space heater to the locals. It'll last them forever because they will, they're comfortable at 20 below zero. They like it there. Set it to zero, maybe melt a little bit, melt a little bit of something to keep grandpa warm, blah, blah, blah. He's walking the alleys of a ship that's in orbit around this planet. Late one night, comes upon a kidnapping. There's two kidnappers. They're apparently kidnapping a wealthy man and his adult daughter. There was also another bystander that got caught up. They load him into a lifeboat. Ensuing stuff happens. The ship crashes way off course on the other side of the planet. Turns out there was someone else in the lifeboat. There was a drunk that the crew had tossed in the lifeboat to sleep it off. A guy named September, who is basically a space pirate. He's this giant mountain of a man, talks like a pirate. He's even got a gold earring. So our cast of characters is one of the kidnappers was killed in the crash. The surviving one is a guy named Walther, Weasley little guy. Ethan, our primary character. September, the giant space pirate. The other bystander, Professor Milliken, a history teacher, Hellspont Duquesne, and his mid-20-year-old daughter. The Duquesnes are one of the wealthiest families in the galaxy, so apparently they were going to kidnap them and ransom them off. They land on the planet. They have some supplies. They've got some survival suits that were intended for the kidnappers and the Duquesnes. One of the kidnappers is dead. So, they manage to make contact with the locals, who take them back to their 12th century castle. One thing I noticed that the names of all the Tran, they're giant cat people. They're a furry's dream. They have flaps of skin between their wrists and their hips, which they use to catch the wind. Their claws and their feet have curled under their toes, so that they're like living ice skates of bone. And they basically put out their arms, catch the wind, and skate across the surface of the oceans. That's something else I liked about this book, is that Alan Foster does a good job of imagining what this culture and these creatures would be. They're hollow boned, so despite their very large size and appearance, they're physically well muscled, but their bodies are light, so that the wind can blow them across the ice easier. Their claws have adapted. They actually have one of their toes is migrated to their heel to use as a brake claw. These creatures use ice for transportation. They've got iceways for highways. You know, they pave the roads and then cover them with melted ice. They can push ice sleds along. When they're at the forge, for metal, they pour melted water over their bodies to shield their bodies in ice to protect themselves from the heat. Foster did a decent job of imagining what life would be like for these people. I thought he did a great job with that. Back to the story. They're introduced to the local lord. They ask him for help getting across the planet. He's like, what do you got to offer? They offer their ship, but he's like, it's crashed, you can't use it. It's great if he'd offer you something that's worthless to you. They save, the king's life for an assassination attempt. He promises to help them. But first, there's a problem. There's this horde of pirates that basically, massive horde that has 5 times the amount of troops that this group of people, this castle has. They just wander from settlement to settlement, taking what they want, killing whom they want as tribute. They stay for like a week or so, then go on to the next one. This has been going on for over 100 years. They've decided to fight, or they convince people, some of the local people are tired of paying tribute. They convince the people, to fight. They view the aliens that have landed as an omen that it's time to fight. The horde comes. They defeat it with some clever help from the space, the humans, which are the space aliens, who build them a giant ship, which then, with the help, some of the help that they get is Milliken, the school teacher, teaches them how to build crossbows. He shows them how to make gunpowder, which they use to blow up a bunch of stuff to kill a lot of pirates. No guns yet. The ship that he makes, he convinced them to build a ship. He bases it on old 12th century clipper ships. So they'll have the biggest, fastest, and most advanced ship of any other of these little city nations on these frozen islands. They have some shenanigans on the way there. They get caught in a storm. They encounter the rest of the pirates who they have to escape from. They wind up on a volcano, which then explodes before they can, so they have to leave that. That's the basic premise of the story. It's what, less than 300 pages? It's short. One of the things I like about, one of the things that made Foster one of my favorite science sci-fi authors is he's got a hook. And his hook is that his main character is almost always like an everyman. Ethan is just a salesman. There's nothing special about him. He's not super smart. Squid September is like a giant, he's a giant man, he's a warrior. He's like a Conan type. Ethan winds up being the leader. The rest of the team the rest of the humans are kind of forced to be the leader because none of them want it. Squid September admits, I'm the guy that breaks heads. That's my job. I'm the guy that the boss tells to go break heads. Milliken's a school teacher. And he being, when they show up, he's the one who speaks the language well because he studied it because we wanted to sell the native stuff. He becomes a leader by default because no one else will take it. He doesn't want it either. The Duquesnes don't speak the language. Walter's a kidnapper. They can't, they don't trust him. He becomes the de facto leader because the rest of them kind of force him to. And even then, he's more of like a coordinator. He really doesn't lead. All the best ideas, like Squid September devises a plan to help, make a sortie from the city when the pirates are attaching, to blow up their catapult, to burn their catapult down. Professor Milliken develops the crossbows, builds the clipper ship, gives them gunpowder. He's not particularly great. And he volunteers to do dangerous stuff just because he doesn't want to be called a coward. Doesn't want to be, the guy sitting in the sidelines. He's not especially brave. He's not especially strong. He's not especially smart. He's just a dude who got thrown in the situation and does what he can to adapt and survive. I'd have to say, a lot of his books are like that. You're a salesman, you're a corporate executive, you're a bartender, you're a college student who's gotten high in an afternoon. Most of his characters, some of them do develop special abilities, but a lot of his characters are just guys who got tossed in a situation that was completely unprecedented. They're stranded on a planet. They meet an alien on Earth. They're on Earth, meet an alien. They're a college student who got sucked into an alternate dimension. You know, you're just a guy. You know, that's what really made me a fan of his. But let's get back to why I wanted to review this book in particular. The video that I watched that made me do this was about fat representation in media. And when I watched the video on how poor the representation usually is, I immediately thought of this book. Because Colette Duquesne, the wealthy heiress to the Duquesne fortune, is overweight and ugly. She is basically described as being round with like a piggy face. But that's really where it stops. I mean, there's some unpleasantness. People don't describe her well. Even Ethan doesn't always. But that's always portrayed, not always. It's not always good. But she is unapologetic. She knows what she is. She's not going to change for other people. She has a very abrasive personality, but a lot of that you figure is, but a lot of that is really revealed because people have treated her poorly, because she's not slim and attractive. She has become an abrasive woman in retaliation of people who treat her badly. And she makes no apologies for it either. She is a intelligent, confident woman who will not back down. There are moments where, you know, she reveals hurt when Ethan says things to her, and he regrets it. He immediately regrets it. He knows he's crossed the line. But she'll take no nonsense from anyone, and she won't change for anyone. At the end of the book, she actually proposes to Ethan out of the blue. He just out of the blue for him. And he's like, why? He hasn't even liked me. And she says, you know, people have treated me with contempt all my life. And you never did. Pity sometimes. And you know, she admits that they've had their difficulties. But she said, you've never treated me with contempt. You've always treated me well, or decently at least. And for some reason in 1974, that's as good as any reputation you're going to get these days. That's better than most representation you'll get these days for people who are fat. It goes on in the, I have the other books in the trilogy. It's a trilogy. Just to give some closure, I'm not going to spoil what these books are. I'm not going to do the story for these. She leaves in the beginning. The second book is Mission to Moluccan. She does leave. They do make it to human civilization. She leaves with her father because her father's in bad health. I forgot to mention that. Her father is going senile. Anyway, her father's in bad health. She leaves to take care of him. The rest of them stay behind because they discover that the local human government is basically taking advantage of the Tran population for profit. They're basically giving them trinkets, taking like their artwork and selling it for a fortune back on Earth. So they stay behind to try and help. But before she leaves, she wants an answer. You know, will you marry me? He says, give me a couple days to think about it. Wait till the ship comes to pick you up. When it does, she says, okay, you've had a couple days. Give me an answer. And he's like, I don't think I can do this. And she's like, you know, I've got plenty of people who offered to marry me. I know they've only done it for money. I see the contempt in their eyes. You've always treated me, you know, she repeats herself. You've always treated me like a human being. You know, I need that. You know, I don't expect you to love me, but you'll always respect me. And that means more to her than anything else. You know, he says no because, like, he's just a salesman. She runs one of the biggest companies in the galaxy. He won't accept like a position as like a flunky just to keep him busy. He won't be like a kept husband, which is what he assumes he will be. He won't be a trophy husband. He won't just sit around idly and do nothing, but he also can't run a company. He's not, you know, he's not that. And she says, you know, she basically comes out and says, I won't beg. You've got, you know, I give you my contact information. If you change your mind, call me. In the third book, Deluge Drivers, he does call her. And she shows up and says, you better not be wasting my time. It's like, you know, I owe these people a lot. These people saved me and my father. I came to help them, but I came back for you. And if you're wasting my time, you will never see me again. This is a strong woman, a strong, unapologetic woman. And again, when someone talked about fat representation, this is the first thing that came to mind. I think the romance between the two of them, there's more like little cutesy stuff in the first book where she kind of like softens to him and starts spending time with him. Which I think is not that great, but it's also a short book because I love space to do in, you know, detailed stuff. But when she comes back, she says, you know, she admits, it's like, I was the only human woman for 18 months, and I saw me lose 5 pounds for every month that went by. I know the only reason you softened to me was because I was the only option available. And she says she doesn't care if the only reason we're together is because we survived what we survived. We dealt with what we dealt with. It was our shared experience. But if you do this, if you say yes, you damn well better mean it, because I will not accept a half-assed answer. That's one of my favorite, that's one of the things I remember most about these books. The books do have I can criticize some of them a bit. Some of it hasn't aged well. There's some misogyny. There's some slang in here that doesn't float today. It's not bad. It's just, oh yeah, that's a word that's not used anymore. Words like, oh, what a sap, you know, stuff like that. The other thing that I can criticize is that there's only 3 real female characters in this book. There's the Tran leader's daughter. I can't remember her name right now. Alpha, who's got the hots for Ethan for some reason. There's another woman introduced in Deluge Drivers who also kind of is interested in Ethan. It's like the only 3 female characters in the book are interested in our main characters. Like, really? Although to Foster's credit, at the end of the book, Ethan does, in his head, like, why are these women interested in me? He's like, these are the only 3 women in my life. All of them are interested in me. He's like, no one's interested in School of September. It's like, why are they? There is that one little like self-aware moment of like, these women should not be interested in me. Why are they doing this? But yeah, these are still some of my favorite books by Alan Dean Foster. I do really like them. I'm sorry, the timer's 18 minutes. I rambled on way too long about this. But despite their age and some things not aging well, I do think they hold up fairly well. From a personal perspective, these are A+. Age-wise, they may have to downgrade like an A- or a B+. They're just goofy, light space adventures. It's basically Conan in space. Kind of, sort of. It's not my, it is what it is. It's a fun, light read. And I'd recommend it just for that. I'll be surprised if anyone's watched this long. I really will. If you have, as always, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please seek therapy. Hit the like, blah, blah, blah. I have other videos. Watch them. It makes me feel better. I like seeing the little number of views go up. Makes me feel like I'm not wasting my time. And then I'm not wasting yours, which I obviously am. Until next time, thanks for watching, and good hunting.